One of the rarest and most satisfying ways to win in chess is to checkmate your opponent by a pawn. And today we're going to take a look at the top 5 most beautiful examples of just that, where one of the victims was none other than Magnus Carlsen. The first position came out of the French defense. It's a game between two amateur players and it is white to move. By the way, since we're going to talk about the 5 examples, you can also check your own tactical vision, okay? So try to find the right moves by yourself in these 5 examples, and then you can let me know later in comments how many out of the 5 you could find on your own, okay? Now, let's continue. So in this position it was white to play, and white deployed a very standard tactical operation, bishop takes h7, known as the Greek gift sacrifice. It's, by the way, very useful to be aware of this tactics because it occurs across many different openings. The idea is after king takes, white can rush into this hasty attack with knight to g5, delivering check to the king, and after that usually white's queen join the party with queen h5 check and then queen to h7. So that's a way to put together this quick, accurate checkmate. In this game, black decided to move their king forward, which certainly is just equally dangerous and loses the game just as well. White played the move pawn to h4, which is actually the right way to go about things. The pawn aims to be pushed forward and to keep attacking the king. Black tried to take there on d4, trying to deflect white from his intent, but white was cold-blooded and just played queen g4 anyway, just aiming for the king, trying to checkmate it. Black tried pawn to f5, still trying to do something about that and push white off track, but white played pawn h5, check to the king. Since our knight controls these two squares, the king has to move here, and now instead of moving the queen away, white played a beautiful discover check with knight takes c6, opening up this bishop to deliver a check. And on the next move, white is ready to play queen takes g7 checkmate, so black tried to somehow delay this checkmate by playing pawn to g5, but instead white played this move pawn takes g6, an en passant capture that wins the game. By the way, funnily enough, so many users reported an en passant capture as a bug on Chess.com and other game zones, but of course it's a bug that is very useful to be aware of and to make use of. The second example is from the game between Hammer playing white against Magnus Carlsen playing black. Currently it is white to play. Generally, we can see that black is a pawn up. They've got this extra pawn on the c file. Also, white's a2 pawn is weak, the g2 pawn is weak, and normally black is winning. But there was something unexpected that happened here. White played rook d8, check to the king. And here black played a very natural yet fatal mistake. Black should have covered the king, but instead he played king to h7. And it's hard to criticize Carlsen for this mistake because, again, it's very hard to foresee and to anticipate being checkmated by a pawn. So, yeah, the following combo is not easy to figure out, but you can try to pause the video and find the right move on your own. Okay, now the right move is knight to g5 check. White just starts this forced attack, and after pawn takes and pawn recaptures, that opens up the other rook of white to deliver this check to the king. And after knight to h5, for the moment, it looks like black's in complete control and black is just winning the game. But here comes another sacrifice. Rook takes h5 to break open the king, and after pawn take there is bishop to e4, which is nearly a checkmate. Black can still cover the king by playing pawn to f5, and here once again our buggy en passant capture delivers this really beautiful checkmate right in an endgame. Moving on to the third example, it is actually a pretty useful trap in the Ponziani opening, so let me show you the entire variation here. After pawn e4, pawn e5, and we're entering this Ponziani opening. Now black goes knight f6, the main variation. We go pawn to d4, attacking black's center here. So black is going to capture one of your pawns, for example, knight takes e4, and here I play pawn d5, driving away this knight from c6. As it goes back, we can get our pawn back on e5. Now black needs to somehow untangle their pieces and develop his kingside. One of the common tracks for black to fall for is playing pawn d6, trying to kick this knight away, which fails to bishop b5 check, and there is no convenient way for black to cover the king other than sacrificing some material, and you win that way. So that is one interesting trap here. The other attempt of black to develop would be knight to g6, trying to attack your knight, as well as to open up their dark squared bishop. In this case, you can also play a fancy counter-attacking move bishop to d3, saying, hey, you're going to take my knight, I'm going to take yours, but I'm also developing my bishop along the way. And in this position, some of your opponents may be tempted to play a smart move knight takes f2, because their idea would be, hey, if I'm going to lose this knight anyway, let me at least get a pawn for it, and in addition to that, I'm going to expose your king, so you take this knight, I take that knight, but along the way, black won a pawn, okay? But in this variation, you've got an absolutely mind-blowing variation that refutes black's idea. You can try to pause the video and figure it out on your own, and I'll give you a few seconds to think about that. But the following variation is complicated, but also extremely beautiful. It is bishop takes g6. We're willing to sacrifice our queen here on d1, which is black is forced to capture anyway, and then after bishop takes f7, we start this unexpected attack of black's king. Okay, so the king is forced to move. Now we play bishop g5. Check to the king once again, the king is pushed forward. Now we attack it with our knight to c4, check to the king once again, it has to go forward, and here comes one more absolutely beautiful move. Many players would be tempted to capture black's queen, but instead there is a lot more elegant and powerful way. It's playing knight to a3, creating this very neat checkmating net around black's king. And after any move of black, something like queen takes g5 for example, here comes this pawn checkmate, pawn b4, and it's interesting how every piece and pawn in our checkmating net plays its role. Like this pin is taking away this square, and this pawn is attacking the king, this knight is taking away this square, and so on and so forth. So it's a really spectacular position, and it's also a useful opening trap to know. In the fourth example, white opened up with the move pawn to f4, the bird's opening, black sacrificed the pawn to gain some initiative, and here after a couple trivial moves, pawn d4, knight c6, bishop to g5, black started a pretty powerful attack. By the way, it's worth noticing here that many of your opponents have this false belief that pinning down your knight to the queen is an absolutely great idea for them, and they're unaware of the downsides of this pin, and there are many actually. So if you are aware of that, you can very often develop a quick and sudden attack for your opponents. In fact, I've got another video where I break down several very effective ways for you to refute your opponents trying to impose this pin on you, and in this game we just can see one of those ideas. It allows black to expand on the king side with a tempo by playing pawn g5, attacking this bishop, and also this pawn is ready to be pushed forward and drive away this knight if necessary. So for now I just moved their bishop back, and black played knight to e4, keep chasing this bishop, and we can easily see that this bishop now becomes rather an object of an attack rather than the attacker. Okay, so after knight e4, white played pawn a3. Now black plays pawn to g4, attacking this knight over here on f3, and so white is already feeling very uncomfortable because, you know, black is ready to then capture the bishop, maybe play the queen out and deliver a check that way. So white is already feeling somewhat uncomfortable, and he decided to try this counter blow, bishop to h4. And here comes the position where you may pause the video and think yourself if you could find the winning variation for black here. Well, the first move is, more or less obvious, because if I'm asking you to think about this, there must be something unusual, right? It's not that you just move your queen away. So black sacrifices the queen, but the following variation is also very interesting. So white accepts the queen sacrifice. Here comes pawn f2, check to the king. King goes forward. Now bishop comes forward to g4, delivering this check. And after king to d3, once again black refuses to capture the queen, but instead decides to hunt the king by playing knight to b4. And white decided, hey, there's a free knight over here on a4, let me capture it, but it suddenly failed to pawn f5, checkmate, right in the middle of the board. And the final example demonstrates a couple really interesting attacking patterns against the French defense that black chose to play here. So after d4, d5, knight c3, bishop b4, one of the main lines of the French defense, pawn e5, pawn c5, white played bishop d2. At first it looks like a bad idea because it hands this pawn on d4, but in reality it's nice for white to trade off these bishops. Like technically white's bishop is bad, and also if you can trade off this dark square bishop of black, that weakens their dark squares, and we're gonna see that in just a moment. So black captured the pawn over here, now white goes knight to b5, and we can see that white's idea was actually quite powerful. If black were to trade their bishop over here, in the future white's knight would gladly land over there on d6, attack the king, and would give white a powerful attack. Black instead decided to play bishop to c5, trying to hold on to this pawn, but white continued with pawn to b4, and the bishop has to go anyway. And after bishop to b6, white could have played knight d6, check to the king right away. That would be a good option, but instead he played queen g4. That's also nice. Whenever your opponent brings his bishop out of f8 square, that potentially makes this pawn vulnerable to your attack. So queen g4 is a very good way of making use of that idea. So queen g4, black played pawn to g6, and now although the pawn is defended, that actually weakens a whole lot of black squares around. White goes knight to d6, check, king has to go, and now queen to f4, white starts threatening checkmating 1 with queen takes f7. Black played pawn to f5, white traded pawns here, And of course, black could have just recaptured the pawn, but his position would still be very dangerous and white would still have a strong attack. But he instead noticed a tactical idea that black can play bishop to c7 and the knight is pinned, and it looks like white is just losing the game because, you know, they can't move the knight away, and if not, black just captures it on the next move. And here you may once again pause the video and think about it for a couple seconds. If you can find the win variation for white, it is powerful. It is actually the only way for white to get out, but to get out with a win. So it's queen to h6, a very unexpected sacrifice, and it's really nice because after this exchange and king goes here to g8, white finishes it off with the move pawn to f7 checkmate. It's quite rare that you can checkmate your opponent by playing pawn to f7, and yet it's the case. Very accurate, very beautiful, and again, this game illustrates a number of cool attacking patterns against the French defense. Let me know if you ever checkmated your opponent by a pawn. And also, if you want to know my best training methods to improve in chess in no time, you may attend this free masterclass that teaches you just that. I hope you enjoyed today's examples, and I'll talk to you soon.